Hello and welcome. I am live. Thank you so much for coming on to the broadcast. You are watching the very first episode of Between the Covers with your book journey mentor, Daniela Bleckner. So for those who are new to my social media, my broadcast, my show, my name is Daniela Bleckner. I'm an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Dreams Publishing. We work with authors from all over the world to help them to get their powerful messages and stories out there in the form of professional books. Behind me on my bookshelf are just some of the 100+ books that we've published over the last 5 and a bit years now. I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen, unheard authors so that they can have their stories shared and voices heard in a space of self-empowerment. So in the form of professional books is what I meant to say as well. So I have a very special guest today, but before I do that, I just want to say live, we are going live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn and Instagram at the same time. So this show is very much about interacting, getting involved. You will have a chance to speak with the guests. You can come into the broadcast should you wish to. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can also do that on the platform too. This is not just a platform for myself or the guests. This is for you to interact as well. As I said, I absolutely love what I do. If you are watching, just do say hello, tap the screen. If you're on Facebook, give us some love. Let us know where you're watching from and if you can hear and see us. Just a little bit about the show. So this show is called Between the Covers, not those covers, the book covers. Okay, so this is about exploring the author journey, finding out the nitty-gritty, what goes on behind the scenes, because quite often we see the finished product here, but we don't know the whole story that goes behind the message, the author, the putting the whole book together. Okay, thank you. Hey, nice to see you. Putting the whole book together, the marketing, the promotion, the whole publishing process. So live and direct. This is going to be aired every Wednesday, 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST. You'll have a chance to meet some of our authors at Conscious Dreams Publishing, as well as other authors as well. So it's not just about authors that we publish. And it's also an opportunity to really engage with experts in the industry who I'm going to be interviewing as well, including booksellers, editors, book promoters, everything that you can imagine to do with book publishing. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our awesome and amazing guest, Vicky Nyanga, who, hey Layla, thank you so much for sharing. She has published 2 books with us now at Conscious Dreams Publishing. The first one is The Prism of Her Thoughts. And then we have the second one, which came out on Saturday, the 5th of June, The Diaspora Experience, Misplaced, Displaced and Redefining Identity. So we're going to be speaking with her. Before I bring her in, I'm just going to share a little bit about this lovely lady who's been a joy to work with. So Vicky Nyanga is an advocate for Black women's issues, which she does through her hobbies of writing poetry. As a South African who was born I can never say this word, help me out, it's in Zimbabwe, Harare. She is also British and a Black woman who is brought up Christian and married an African Muslim. Vicky sits at a unique intersection of identities from which she is able to draw rich and intriguing perspectives. She is a keen life explorer who has traveled extensively, mainly around Europe, and grew up in various places. She is a proud Mancunian, I can say that word, who has earned her bachelor's degree in contextual theology from Manchester University. In most of her writing, she illuminates the struggle of the Black experience against oppression, with a focus mainly on Black womanhood. Through her writing, she aspires to leave a legacy of liberation after she's gone. Give us some love, show us some hearts, just tap the screen, give us some comments if you'd want to meet this awesome and amazing woman, Vicky Nyanga, bringing her on live and direct on Instagram and on all the other channels. Now, just bear with me a second, because this is a new thing that I'm doing right now. And for Vicky too. I'm used to going live on just one platform. So Vicky, I've invited you into the Instagram. Hey, everyone who's watching. And okay, lovely. So are you able to come into the Instagram? I think I've invited you. I've invited you in. We've got double whammy today. We've got StreamYard. If anyone does any broadcasting, was going to do a show. Hey, Babatunde. Babatunde is also one of our authors. His book's coming out on the 12th of this month, very, very soon. Unseen Depths of the Heart. Amazing book. But tune in a few weeks' time, and then you can hear the interview. So Vicky's just getting into the broadcast on Instagram. Hey, Aisha. Okay. So as I'm saying, if you ever want to do a show and you want to do a broadcast and have it on lots of different platforms, I highly recommend StreamYard. At the moment, this is going live to YouTube, as well as Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. And I've got the second device here where we're going live on Instagram. So just waiting for Vicky to go get into the Instagram live. Are you able to come in, Vicky? Oh, don't tell me she can't hear me. Hey, Janetti. Are you coming in, Vicky? I can't see your request.
I think I'm in.
And you're not in the Instagram, darling.
Here we go again. It's saying I've joined. It's saying I'm in.
No, not on the screen, darling. You're in the broadcast, but you're not. Oh, here we go. There we go. Nope. Oh, it worked before. Oh, there we go. Okay, let me. Going live with Vicky on Instagram as well. Good to see you back, Yeshiva, as well. Hey, Layla. Hey, Laurel. So if you're watching, please do say hello. Show us some love. This is a very interactive platform. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in, whether it's via Instagram or whether it's on Facebook. I can't seem to get you in for some reason. It worked before, didn't it?
Yeah.
Can you try and click in again? Hey, Cully, nice to meet you here on LinkedIn. Wow, so we've got a LinkedIn crew watching as well. It's the first time I've actually gone live on LinkedIn. This is very exciting. I'm just waiting for Vicky to come into the Instagram live.
I can see my name. It says I'm in.
But you're not in, as in you're not actually in the broadcast.
Well, I've sent you a request to put me in. I don't know. Try again.
I have. It's just going round in circles.
Yeah.
That's very strange. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. This is very strange because this worked before fine.
Yeah.
But we will get there. What I'm going to do on Instagram is I might start the Instagram again.
Okay.
And then bring you in. Sing. I can't sing. All right, I'm going to try and bring you in. I'm not sure what's happened there. Oh, hey, Ngozi, nice to see you. I'm so glad you can hear and see us both. I'm just going to go live again on Instagram because I know that we've got the lovely Vicky here, but unfortunately, doesn't seem to be working on Instagram. So let me try this again. Okay, I'm now live in Instagram. I'm going to send you a request to come in. Okay, I've sent you a request. Okay, if you're watching live on Instagram, my name is Daniela Bleckner. I'm an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Dreams Publishing. We work with authors from all over the world to help them to get their powerful messages and stories out there in the form of professional books. On the bookshelf behind me here, you can see just some of the 100+ books that we've published over the last 5 years. I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen, unheard authors so that they can have their voices heard and stories shared in the form of professional books. Hey Vicky, I'm just inviting my lovely guest in again, hoping this is going to work. So the invite's gone out. Any minute now, we will see her on this screen. Here we go. Brilliant, she's in. So we just need to mute the iPad again.
So has that worked?
Okay, we're in. Double whammy. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your patience. So welcome to the awesome and amazing Vicky Nyanga. It is worth it, absolutely, promise you. She is a 2-time author. She's published with us just in the last year or less than that 2 books: The Prism of Her Thoughts, an insight into Black womanhood and Black motherhood, and The Diaspora Experience, Misplaced, Displaced, and Redefining Identity. So Vicky, I know that you're an advocate for giving a voice to the voiceless, and you've got poetry coming out of your ears. I know you've got lots more books that you want to publish. So has writing poetry or always been something that you've wanted to do? Have you always wanted to be an author, or has it happened organically through your experience? And by the way, on Instagram, you're not on the camera. We can see your, yeah, that's
right.
it.
So hi everyone. There's an echo on Instagram, and I'm just so distracted at the moment, and I'm not sure why, because I am muted.
I can't hear anything. That's strange.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead anyway. How I came into writing, I think it's mainly through experiences. I'm a migrant women's mentor. I've been mentoring migrants for over 15 years now. And I feel like most of my poetry came out of just reflecting on people's experiences, people that come from far away, have to come and live in this country, the hardships, the victories, just their day-to-day experiences, from coming in as people seeking asylum or coming in as people looking for just a way to live here, and then maybe ending up actually living here or ending up with visas or whatever. So yeah, it's just, I think that's where my writing comes from.
Brilliant. And I want to touch on your work with migrants and refugees a bit later as well. But I just want to talk first about your first book, because we haven't had an interview about your first book. So let's touch on this, because they're both amazing books. Right. What was your inspiration behind it? I know you said that with the people that you've worked with, is some of it an element of your personal experience? And can you tell us a little bit about The Prism of Her Thoughts?
Right. So this particular edition is really about the first wave of COVID, right? So I think that was around March last year when, the whole world went into lockdown, and everybody experienced uncertainty, frustration, just not being able to see family, having to stay at home, being kept from work, not being able to earn. So there were issues, many issues to do with anxiety, mental health, depression. Just this great sense of instability came over everybody. And through my work with discussing life in general with women, this became a very big issue. And I thought it would be a good idea to get women to sort of write how they feel. Write how they feel about what's going on, write how they feel about their life situation at that particular moment. And from that came this book.
And tell us about the title. What inspired the title Prism of Her Thoughts?
So Prism of Her Thoughts is mainly around how I feel and what I think about the way people have to experience life when they come here, whether you're, a woman or a man or a woman with children, a single woman, just when you come from wherever you come from and have to come and live in the UK, just my thoughts around that, And this particular edition is focusing on women, on motherhood, coming to this country with children, having to parent children under dire circumstances in most cases, under situations where you probably don't have enough money to look after your children, or you don't have the permission to work, or you have limited hours to be able to work, or you have to overwork because you're a single mom, and all of those sort of situations.
Yeah, I mean, there's a poem there, wasn't there? I was reading just a minute ago, actually, about called Jason, which I want to touch on later, and how he becomes almost a victim of the system because the mother has to. It's not because the mother doesn't want to be present; she can't be present. But I want to touch on womanhood for a second, especially Black womanhood. You have a poem, page 34, called Womanhood, and you really talk about, the celebrate women in terms of being life givers, nurturers, amazing, wives, children, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, all of these kind of different hats that we have to juggle. But I think with womanhood, there always seems to be, especially when we talk about Black women, a sense of suffering or having to endure, this strong Black woman. And that's something that I was raised with. I've got poems, I've taken them down now, but poems over my house, images of strong Black women. But I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Do you feel that this label that we're quite often, we see this narrative of, strong Black women having to endure all, do you think it's detrimental, or do you think it's an accurate picture? What are your thoughts around this?
I actually hate that label. I resent it because so much of it ignores the fact that Black women are actually human beings. We're expected to just go above and beyond, and nobody really takes a minute to think about our welfare, our well-being, our mental state. We're just expected to be on the go, 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 and I find that really unfair. And I think sometimes it happens subconsciously, People have this idea of Black women, as you say, being very strong, being hardworking, being resilient, and all of that. And I just really always encourage women to reject that label, because if you don't reject that label, you go down into this rabbit hole of being exhausted by, everyone expecting you to do everything, everyone thinking you're capable of doing everything, everyone coming to you because they think you're the go-to person when they've got problems, and and in the end, that takes a toll on you emotionally, mentally, physically. And so I always say to women, take your life a day at a time. Say no if you need to say no. Sit around and do absolutely nothing. That's okay. It's not lazy to just sit around and not do nothing. That's part of what self-care is. And I always have this funny look on my face when people start talking about how they're strong Black women and things like that. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, you have no idea what you're talking about. I just really hate it.
I 100% agree with you. I find it very isolating. And like I say, I come from a line of strong Black women, but in that there has been a sense of suffering, and there has been a sense of endurance. And I think subconsciously you think, in order for me to live up to that, I need to go through some kind of suffering or pain. And and I think it's quite isolating for us, especially to have this label, because it makes us feel like we can't go outside for help, because we have to keep it together and be resilient and tough. So I 100% agree. And Simone saying true, thank you. What are your thoughts on this if you're watching this as well? If you're watching on Instagram, hello, please do. I'm looking in between the both. So if you have any comments or questions, you're very, very welcome to put your questions up as well. If I miss them, feel free to throw them up again as well. Say hello, let us know where you're watching from. So I'm Daniela Beckner, speaking with also an amazing author and poet, Vicky Nyanga, who's written 2 books with us, The Prism of Her Thoughts, as well as The Diaspora Experience, which is the latest book that came out last Saturday the 5th, so only a few days ago. Just staying with The Prism of Her Thoughts for a moment, you speak about marriage on page 68, and I really like the first verse and the last verse, which I'm going to read, and I just want to get your thoughts on this as well. So it's called Marriage. Marriage is not eternal. Marriage fails because we think it's eternal. We take it for granted. Then the last stanza is, they say that marriage is like silverware. It requires constant polishing, so it can look better, shine, and remain in the best condition. If only they had polished their marriage like silverware. I love that. I just wanted to get your inspiration really behind that poem and just find out a little bit what your thoughts on marriage are. And do you think that the Western portrayal of marriage focuses on the right things? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I don't really delve much into the Western portrayal of what marriage is, because I just feel like if you're living in these parts of the world, marriage is deemed unimportant anyway, you know. So very rarely do you find people that encourage marriage, you know, or that just feel like marriage is important to begin with. We're living in a space where, you know, we're told you could do everything by yourself. You don't need a man to, you know, do anything for you or to be in your life or whatever. So men become very irrelevant, and with that, marriage becomes irrelevant. So not many people speak of marriage, so to speak, you know, but amongst the people that are married, I do find that sometimes there's failures within the marriage because there is this heavy influence of independence. And so within marriage problems, sometimes there's this issue of taking each other too much for granted in the marriage, not really valuing each other within marriage, because there's always another option, you know. There's always that thought in the background that says, well, you know, if I finish with you, there's the next person I could get with, or, you know, there's always other options. And nobody really gets into this mindset of, you know, we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
So within Western societies, I just feel like, especially within our community, I have found situations where people don't value each other very much because there's always a different option. You know, there's always this talk of, I don't need him, you know, he needs me more than I need him, you know, and I could move on, and all this sort of talk. And moving on isn't necessarily the issue. It's just, you know, being grounded within having someone that's you can spend the rest of your life with, and, you know, someone that could build into your life, someone that could contribute to your life, and vice versa. It's not always one-sided. So I do find that, you know, people take each other for granted quite often within marriage, especially in the younger generation. People don't, if they do end up married, it's one of those, yeah, we're married, but if it ends, it ends.
Yeah. Everything's so fast paced, especially when you look at, you know, the dating apps and this and this and that and swipe. And it's just, I'm old school. It's too fast. Yeah, exactly. And I think for me personally, I think I love the idea of marriage in the sense that it's not just about, you know, the marriage, the wedding, or the day, but it's about the two families coming together, community building. So you're building on your family and your legacy and your generation. But I think my point of view, I think the Western point of view focuses very much on wedding and the, you know, bridesmaids and dress and ring. And listen, I'm not having any of that.
Spending thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds.
Save that money for a beautiful family holiday. Do you know what I mean? So thank you for answering that. So we've got Simone, she says, Black women are more than just being strong, working hard, and just so independent. You don't need anyone. We are just beautiful when we're fragile, feminine, flawed, and just as such women. Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Yashiba says, congrats, Vicky. Simone says, too many strong women drop down dead. Yeah. Become sick or simply isolated from being able to depend on others and ask for help. We can rely on a man, work with our men, and sit and be strong. and still be strong and independent. Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could go in so many different directions with this, because you speak about so many things. I just wanted to touch on that, about Black womanhood and marriage here. But you've got a poem called, in this book, The Angry Wife's Rant. Tell us a little bit about that and how it links to the diaspora experience.
Okay, so this poem, right, is it's quite a common story within the circles of migrant women coming from Africa, right? So you may come in together as a family, and then you get here, and then there's this issue of you need to sort your paperwork out. So you may come in as a family of 4, a family of 6, and then the Home Office says, right, you need to stay here longer. You need maybe a spousal visa or whatever, and both of you needs to go get somebody to marry so you could end up staying here legally. And what tends to happen in some of these circles is the woman, because she's got children, always has other options, because this country doesn't let people down sometimes if you've got children. But the man's got to go off and sort the paperwork out, right? And sometimes there's arrangements between the families. So the wife may agree to go and, okay, go ahead, go do this, go get married to so-and-so. And then, afterwards she could get a paperwork. And it works quite differently now. This is quite an old poem. So the system's changed and, policies have changed. So it works quite differently now. But back then that would have been what would have needed to happen. And then what then happens is maybe the guy just goes off and starts a fresh family with this other person, and then just totally abandons this family that he brought over.
So the plan's all gone in a different level.
Yeah, and of course the new spouse of this person is normally a white person. Mm-hmm. So there's dynamics there of racism and stuff like that. So these kids are going through racism in school or racism in the community. The wife's going through maybe racism at work. And it's all these issues around, identity and not quite fitting in. And then your husband just goes off and marries a white person, and totally ignores the fact that you're going through racism. And it's a sort of betrayal. And this woman's very angry. And yeah, so she's having a rant about what that actually is about.
So you work with, so I'm just trying to find some links here. You obviously work a lot with, refugees, migrants, and those seeking asylum. Are these stories that you've heard?
Yes.
And they are, yeah.
Yes.
And so some of the poems in here, they influenced by some of the personal stories that you've heard. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, amazing.
We're moving on to the next one.
Yeah, I want to start talking about this in a second, but there's a couple of things here. Kuli says she'd like to hear you recite your poems. She will be. Don't you worry, that's going to happen. So hold tight. Janetti says here on Instagram, my wedding after the church was in my own garden. Exactly. I love that idea. A wedding in I haven't got a garden, but I want a garden. A wedding in your back garden. Beautiful, nice, intimate. Anyway, let's put that aside. So tell us about your work with migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. And I am also aware, especially on Instagram, I do have younger followers who may not know the difference between a migrant, a refugee, and an asylum seeker. So could you just give us a bit of context before you tell us about how you work?
A migrant in general is someone that just comes from somewhere else to live in another country. So wherever you come from in the world and you just end up in another country, you've migrated, you're a migrant. So a person seeking asylum, I don't often like to say asylum seeker. I just like to give it a bit more respect and say a person that comes to seek asylum is someone that's fleeing persecution.
Okay.
So it can be cultural, it can be something to do with war, it can be something to do with working in an old job and your life is at risk. It can be anything under that situation, but mainly the people seeking asylum that we find in this country are people that are fleeing persecution of war. And it just depends on what year they come. At the moment, we've got a lot of people coming in from Syria, and back in the day, it would have been Congo, would have been Zimbabwe, it just depends on what major situations happened in your country, and you've got to go to somewhere else to try and get protection and, try and start a new life, because where you're coming from isn't livable. A refugee is someone that's sort of graduated from being a person seeking asylum, and that's somebody who's now received a stay. And that could be like the government could recognize where you're coming from and what your situation is, and then they give you a visa to stay in the country. It can be 5 years or it can be indefinite. And the policies around that change depending on who's in government.
Thank you for breaking that down. So I hope that's clear. So thank you for correcting me on that. So a person seeking asylum, thank you, that makes a lot more sense. So my mother's family, my mother came over here as a migrant, and my dad's father came over here as a refugee. And I think a lot of people don't really understand reasons why people would need to come, why they would need to migrate to other places, or necessarily know what's happening in different areas of the world. So how do you feel, from your experience and what you've seen and what people tell you who are in this position, how do you think refugees are viewed on a national scale but also globally?
On a national scale, I think there's a lot of hostility towards refugees, towards anyone that's not from here. There's a lot of pushback against people coming into this country, and I just feel like, without trying to be political about it, the government does the most to create an environment and rhetoric where migrants are treated differently.
There's a lot we can say about that.
Yeah, and I'll just keep it there. That's why I said I don't want to get political.
No, exactly.
I'll just
tell us about some of the work that you do. So you didn't really touch on what you actually do with in your job role with migrants and refugees.
So I work with Black women from Africa mainly, and that's just purely based on where I'm located. So Black African women, and that's my biggest client group. And again, we deal with issues of settling in, migration, home, housing, employment, getting kids into school, issues with if they're in trouble with social services, or issues around culture and culture shock and all of that sort of stuff. And it's mainly around having discussions and signposting to wherever they need to be, and just listening to what their issues are and trying to find solutions.
Amazing, thank you. And what are some of the biggest challenges migrants and refugees face, do you think? Apart from
I think the biggest challenge is, when they get refused. So that's really people seeking asylum. That is, when they get refused, that's a big challenge, because their support gets stopped. They become destitute. They have to rely on friends and family for a place to live. They get exploited. So all kinds of things happen underground. And for me, it's mainly the exploitation. It's, people that get asked to do things that they wouldn't otherwise be asked to do. People get treated really badly. And this is also why you find in this country, there's a big problem with people getting exploited for sex. So there's a lot of sexual exploitation going on with women and children in this country. And that's all to do with government failure, again, without trying to get into the politics of it all. So that can get really challenging, because then it's someone like me would have very little means to help people like that, because they've reached the end of the rope, and that's that, nothing.
I can see how that's. I'm just wondering, is there any kind of organization, or what can we as a the general public. I know it's Refugee Week coming up, I think 21st of June, I think. Pretty sure it's that week. Is there anything we on the outside can do? Are there any organizations that we can connect with to assist?
I mean, there's a lot of organizations doing the sort of stuff that I do, and a lot of I can say all of them, do what they do very well, and it's all about looking into policies and finding loopholes within those policies to get these people through onto the other side. So it's just really about finding out what the policies are, what's going on in Parliament, who the MP is, and sort of pushing them to push certain issues. And most organizations doing this stuff are really good at what they do, but sometimes they do it underfunded. Sometimes they do it with no money at all. But it's really about people being really kind. Sometimes you've got people that are solicitors who will help for free. You've got GPs who will actually treat people without asking for passports, because there's this new thing now. If you've not got the right status in the country, it's not that new. It's been happening for a couple of years. If you've not got the right status, you can't see a GP, you can't be registered with a GP and all of that. And with that comes this big problem we've had this year, or in the last year and a half, with COVID, where people that cannot access a GP will not have a letter to be invited for the vaccination. So it's all of that sort of stuff that happens underground, but you will find specialists or professionals, GPs, lawyers that are willing to just get people in and help them regardless.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm sure if there are any organizations, sorry?
There's always a way.
There's always a way, there is. I'm sure if we come across any organizations, we can put them in the links a bit later on. I would love you to share some of your poetry, but there is a question here from Yeshiba. She's asking, is there any domestic abuse situations with women?
In where I work?
I'm assuming.
Within my work, yes, certainly. And sometimes there's one situation that comes to mind. A woman who didn't have her stay in this country was being abused and needed to go to a women's refuge, and they didn't really have funding for women like her. So it's all these sort of issues. So yeah, again, it was about loopholes and trying to figure out what was the best way to help that person. Another person who didn't have papers, she had a health condition. I've written a poem about that person, and she got raped. But when the police came, they were more focused on the fact that she was illegal and didn't have papers, and not so much about the fact that she'd just been violated. And so, those are some of the things that happen to people.
Wow. So it's almost like with your papers comes a certain status. So you're no longer human in a sense. We lose our sense of humanity.
Well, you should, you don't have the right to be here. So if you've been raped, what do you want us to do about it? And on top of it, you've got a health condition. And on top of it, all of that. And the police were being really weird.
That's horrendous. Well, I'm so glad that you've actually encapsulated a lot of these experiences that you've heard and that you've gone through, or other women have experienced, and you've been able to encapsulate it in a book. So can you share with us? We've got another comment. Here we go. Ngozi says she used to volunteer with Haringey Migrant Centre, and it really opened my eyes to see the issues surrounding migrants. It's so heart-rending.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
So would you please, thank you for that, Ngozi. Would you like to share some of your poems with us? I think Kuli especially would like to.
I'll read one. I don't know how much time have I got.
You've got time for two. We can have two couple of poems. Yeah.
All right. I'm a proud Mancunian, as Danny said before. So I'll read one about Manchester, right? And this poem is really about growth and transition, the growth of individuals and the growth of places. So this poem is about the way Manchester and an individual transitioned. The backstory to this poem is, I think in 1997, the IRA bombed a part of Manchester. And when I arrived in Manchester, coming from Africa, It wasn't anything that I thought in my thoughts that it would be. I hadn't imagined it would look that way. You come from Africa and you're going to Europe and you sort of think you're going to see gold everywhere and everything's silver and gold and everything's, you know, nice and diamonds and all that.
Yeah.
And I arrived in my community and it was all boarded up houses, you know, houses that had been sort of half burnt and no windows because of the effects of the bomb and all of that. So it was actually a worse place to arrive at compared to where I was coming from. And that alone shook me a little. But I lived in Manchester for I think I lived in Manchester for 19 years before I moved to where I live now. And so this poem is really about that. So Manchester, before I went there, I had a dream of a life full of promise and glee. It wasn't what I expected. The area had just been bombed by the RIA, 1998. It was dull and gray, run-down housing everywhere, poor, lovely people who never forgot to pray. Despite their hardship, determined to stay. Not quite what my mind's eye had shown me as I looked out the window on the runway. I soon got accustomed to the community that was left in neglect. The government never showed any regret. We only had ourselves, yet we could easily turn on each other unchecked. The streets paved with tar, but built on respect. Knuckle-dusted fists connect. Everyone knows everyone direct, but nobody dare grass. They would rather misdirect. Helicopters hovering always. Car chases, house raids, daily blazes, SWAT teams, light beams, never a dream. That was just our reality. We grew up together, Manchester and me. We both had hoped to be and do better. So when Manchester regenerated, I did too. Now we serve the community together. We lend a hand, we give back despite the weather to those who made us what we have become. We always remember. And when I left, I often dreamt of all things Manc, the daily rain, tea and Eccles cakes, Luther King House, Flatfields Park, Mottside Carnival, Great Western Street, Alexander Park, my mother's house, buskers and freebies on Market Street.
Thank you.
That's one of those ones.
So a real contrast to what you're expecting.
No, no. So yeah, if anyone's listening and they're from Africa and you've never been to Europe before, you know, and you get the opportunity to come here, you've always got this wild idea of what this place is. You know, you never think there's poverty here. You think people eat 3 square meals a day and you just think money's falling from everywhere. You just really have this sense of you walking into an easy life. And then actually when you get here, it's not like that. And so, you know, often when I go back home, people want me to, you know, help me get a visa, or when I travel around Africa and I make friends and, oh, bring me to Europe and all of that sort of stuff. And I always say to people, you don't want to come to Europe.
Really not what you think.
Really hard life.
Well,
and they don't understand it.
when the invitation came from the mother country, it was like the streets are paved with gold. It's like we're looking for the gold. Where is it?
Yeah.
You've got the, you know, you've got the contrast of the richness, and you have the contrast of the poverty. And the poverty is something that, you know, a lot of people outside of Europe aren't really aware of until you actually get here and see it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite sad because people are willing to die to get here, you know, with all these stories about people getting in the sea. And I know they can't help it because they just feel like where they are is worse off. And people are actually willing to risk dying just to come to the UK. And then when they get here, it's not that easy at all.
Yeah, the system, isn't it?
Yeah.
He says, my husband came from India and he felt the same. Yeah, emotional and true images. Kuli, would you like another poem from Vicky? I think we should have another poem from Vicky. Let's have one more.
Okay, so this one's We Are Beautiful. Walking into town via the Hume flyover, listening to Nana talk about how we shouldn't cry over not being wealthy enough to stop on King Street. She says we come from African royalty, even though we live within a system that shows us no loyalty. Never. That's why we're radical. We have no choice but to maintain our dignity. We refuse to be unfairly stopped and searched, besmirched. They work for us, civil servants, not serpents whose purpose is to cause disturbance and make us nervous, give us bad service. We have nothing but the weekend to live for. Richie's barbershop, Friday afternoon, wait in line whilst listening to a tune, loud sound on Great Western Street, jerk chicken browned, 2 for £6, Friday night dance at the Great Western Hall, and then lazy Sundays, football, basketball, handball, girls walking past, we catcall, then we sprawl in Alexander Park. Dinner time, meatballs, nightfall, get Nana's prayer shawl, sitting in and watching the rain fall. All in all, we are the best. After all, dance hall, hiring a hall, music hall, concert halls, function calls, free for all, Manchester, Gunchester, Manchester, we're black, we're British, we're beautiful.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the wordplay there as well. Tell us just a tiny bit of the inspiration behind that poem, and then I think.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Just give us a little bit of a sort of inspiration behind that poem, just a snapshot. What inspired you to write that particular poem?
Yeah, so this poem is really about pride, having pride, living in a country where maybe you may have come from a better place. Most African people would have come from communities where someone within their family was a chief, or they came from royalty or whatever, and then come here and, you're just an ordinary person. But within that, you've got to keep maintaining your pride of who you are from back home, but also assuming fresh identity. When you get here, you become someone else.
Yeah.
You don't always stay African. I was African when I got here. I'm Black British now. So it's really about that.
And that fits really nicely with the subtitle, which is Misplaced, Displaced, and Redefining Identity.
Yes.
You're constantly redefining.
Yeah. So the identity constantly changes. You come as someone, you leave as someone else, or you don't leave as someone else. You stay as someone else. It's about constantly evolving and growing.
100%. Ngozi says, brilliant, portraying real life. Kuli says, absolutely beautiful imagery. Laurel says, powerful poem. So I've put a link to Vicky's author page on Amazon. So if you want to get a copy of The Prism of Her Thoughts, as well as the Diaspora Experience, you can do that as well through the link. Where can people connect with you, and what is next for you, Vicky?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Where can people how can people connect with you, and what is next for you?
So I'm at vickynyanga.com, and on there I've got you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, if you're trying to just keep up with what I'm up to.
Awesome, thank you. And what have you got anything in the pipeline? What's next for you?
Well, you know what I'm up to, Danny. Still writing poetry.
I know.
And the thing about it is, this first book, first one, I feel like I did myself some justice on this one. I feel like, the poetry gets better and better. I've got a third one coming. You'll know about it when you get the manuscript.
All right.
As usual. And I'm also writing something around feminism and Black womanhood. That's not poetry, it's an actual study. It's taken me about 3 or 4 years to write. It's still in the making, but it will be born soon. So that's what I'm up to, just writing and trying to help women.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. You're not trying, you are doing an excellent job. You're giving a voice to the voiceless through your poetry and your education through your books. So I've learned a lot just from reading them as well, so thank you so much. Someone's put up the website there, Be United World. I think it's Vicky Nyanga, so with the A on the end. .com. That's the website, isn't it? And I was going to say something, it's gone from my memory. I wanted to actually ask you about the whole writing process and your book journey and the publishing process, but the topics today was so interesting. I could talk about your books forever because there's so much to talk about, and we've only got an hour maximum. So I think we're going to have you back on and actually talk about your author journey as well, everything that's gone on behind the scenes. And Gozi says, thank you so much, Danny, and very inspiring, Vicky. Amazing. It's been amazing to have you. Thank you very much for being my first guest on Between the Covers. That went really quickly. We will be back next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST, where I'll be interviewing the awesome and amazing author Eileen Forrestal from Ireland. She's publishing her book called The Courage to Shine, which is coming out on the 18th of June. She has a book launch on the 21st of June. I've also posted about that on my Instagram and Facebook. And Jack Canfield has written, yes, Jack Canfield has written the foreword. So please join us next week, Wednesday, for another episode of Between the Covers. I have been Daniela Blecknar, speaking with, just say your name, Vicky.
Vicky Nyanga, sorry. I'm not that sharp.
I tried a little thing there, you know. So, hey, Camilla, thanks for joining. We're going now.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
No problem. If you found this of worth and value, please do share this out. We've got to have these platforms for ourselves, and we've got to share them out to others. So let's get this far and wide so as many people as possible can get copies of these amazing books and learn about these people's stories and hear, you can listen to it in mind, read Vicky's amazing poetry. I'm going to go now. So I'll see you next week, Wednesday. Take care.
Thanks, Danny. Bye.
Bye.